Hi everyone, I'm Mark Mulholland. Today on The Upbeat, we're talking about finding love again after loss. Joining me to share her story of falling in love again after suffering a tragic loss is Annamaria Bellantoni from Saratoga Springs, New York. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
My name is Annamaria Bellantoni. I live in Saratoga Springs. I lost my husband Joe in 2005, and I remarried in 2010. I've been married for 11 years now, very happily.
And your husband's name is Mark Bellantoni?
Yes, my husband's name is Mark Bellantoni.
And he's a firefighter?
Yes.
And he checked all the boxes. Just kidding. It wasn't. You didn't have a firefighter on your list, did you?
No, I didn't. I didn't have that on there.
Looks like Santa almost finished all of his food.
What do you got? Chocolate lollipop? How was that? Yummy.
That was the voice of Joe Dalton, Annamaria's late husband, enjoying Christmas in the early 2000s with his young children, Daniel and Joanna. And by the way, in converting Annamaria's home videos for use on this podcast, it was the first time her daughter, Joanna, who is now in college, remembers hearing her father's voice. That was a very sweet and unexpected byproduct of this podcast episode. Tell me a little bit about your former husband. Let's begin there. And what happened that led you to where you are today?
Yes, okay, so he was injured in a mountain bike accident. Well, he was injured on a mountain bike, a fluke accident on his bicycle where he flipped over the handlebars. He didn't have a helmet on. It wasn't any sort of adventure thing that he thought he really needed it for. It was more of a joyride. And it was dusk, and he was kind of going on to the Watkins Glen track and down an embankment, and a woman walked in front of him and he flipped over his handlebars. He ended up with a serious concussion, we thought, which was hopeful. And
were you there at the time, Annamaria? Were you?
No, because he was out of town. And so, I got the phone call that he, had this concussion, and, I was, of course, alarmed, but the doctor kind of told me that, we think this is going to reabsorb into the body. It shouldn't be an issue. And so that was probably like early hours, in the evening, like in the morning, let's say 2 or 3 in the morning. So I waited till I could feel like I could call his parents and tell them what had happened. So, his dad and I immediately got in the car and headed to Watkins Glen. And, I had my mom come over and watch the kids. And within a couple of days, the concussion just got worse, and the brain bleed was worse. And so now it was this emergency situation that he either needed surgery to relieve the pressure, or we had to make a decision as a family what to do about that.
So you're going from what you think is a minor little accident,
right,
to you got to make a life and death decision.
Right.
What was that like?
Very, very, very stressful.
You got 2 young children at home?
Yeah. And so between that time, then we, once we knew how bad it was, we alerted the rest of his family, his brother, his sister, his mom, and we all met there, and it was, just decision time. And, he had some surgery to relieve some of the pressure, we decided. And again, it got worse. It got worse, and it just wasn't getting better. And so the doctor said, here's your options. You can just see what happens. And, if he recovers, we don't know what the outcome will be. We don't know if, he'll be his normal self. Chances are there would be some deficits and things like that. Or, he would just have to be declared brain dead. And so there was a lot of family discussion, just nothing you would ever think would happen.
How old were your kids at the time?
My daughter had just turned 3 in July, and Joe died in August, and my son was 6 and a half, 6.5.
3 and 6.5.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think knowing Joe, the one thing we all knew was that, he was very larger than life and very adventurous and just, really outgoing. And we knew he didn't want to, live, with any deficits. We all knew, and I knew those were his wishes because believe it or not, we did talk about that.
You're a young couple, so
yeah.
it is a little unusual to talk about those things, right?
Right.
Because we all think we're invincible when we're in our 20s and 30s.
Exactly. So
When did he pass?
his accident was on the 14th of August, and he died on the August 20th. So he was, just about a week between his accident and the day he died.
It's amazing that you can even remember it now, because I'm sure a lot of it having been in a similar situation, ours wasn't sudden like yours, but don't you feel like it's a haze? Don't you feel like a lot of that time is a haze because you're trying to hold it together for your children?
Yes.
And keep it all together and, oh my God, I've just lost my husband.
Yeah.
That wasn't what the plan was supposed to be.
No, exactly. I mean, some moments of it do stick out in my head, like the dates or certain odd things. But, like you said, a lot of it just became a blur because it's unbelievable. You're just in a fog. You're like, this cannot be real. This can't be happening.
What was life like in the ensuing weeks, months, turning into years?
After he died?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was definitely a blur, and just I think I was just really focused on my kids. I'm sure very similar for you. That was just the hardest thing I ever had to do, was just one day they saw their dad and he was just going away on a work trip and they never saw him again. And, you had to tell them that he was never coming back, or, it was just awful. It was awful. That I remember, that you remember, that you remember. And it's just an absolute horrible thing.
This podcast is about perseverance and hope. How did you maintain hope? How did you persevere following his death?
Well, I have to say, I have a strong faith, even though I felt that was tested. I felt that was very tested. I was very angry. Just one of these things where you just think, how can these things happen to good, normal people? And so I really, I struggled with that faith piece a bit, but it was always there. I did have a really good support system, just so many great people came out of the woodwork, people I never met, people I didn't know, just offering to help me with so many things, giving me money, babysitting, I'll mow your lawn, cooking me food. I mean, just amazing things, and just so much good from people that kind of lifted me up too.
When did you first have a little bit of alone time? When did you first decide that you might want to meet someone, that you might want to go out? And I'm guessing you probably didn't start looking. It never happens that way, or maybe it did. Did you reach a point in your life where you said, you know what, I need someone to partner with?
Not initially, no. I just was very, I just thought, I'm never going to meet anyone. I don't want to meet, who am I going to let be a parent to my children? No, I was just really like, nope, I'm not interested in that at all.
I can totally relate to that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember one day and I do remember this time frame for whatever reason. It was like 4 months after Joe died, and whenever he would come, you'd come into our garage and go through the door to come into our kitchen. That was, how we went into our house. And I would always hear the door just slam, and I would just be like, oh, Joe's home, Joe's home, Joe's home, And one day, it was right around that 4-month mark, the door slammed, and I just thought, Joe's not coming home. And it just kind of hit me like a brick. And I just kept thinking, maybe he's home, before that I was like, maybe he's, maybe that's him, you're just holding on to something.
Yeah, reality set in then.
Right, and I just thought, okay. And that was just more of like a turning point to just to really start like healing, not so much like your basic grief, because that was, I sought counseling for that. And then it was just, as I got further out a little bit, it was more like, you know what, I think I need to just look at doing something to help me move forward. Because I was just stuck.
Stuck
you
in the
feel
grief,
like
stuck-
stuck in your grief, stuck in the past. You don't want your world to change, but your world is changing. And you're trying to like figure out where you're at in there. You don't want to change, but you have to. You have to move forward. And, also having the kids helped me with that because
You don't want to be stuck in the grief. You don't want to be stuck in the
No.
grief for them. You want them to have a
Exactly.
healthy upbringing. You
Exactly.
don't want them to be sad all the time.
Exactly.
When did you first date? Do you remember?
It was probably like, honestly, like almost like a year and a half, probably after Joe died.
Do you find that people put some judgment on that? Do you find that people say, "Oh, that's too long. That's not long enough. That's you need to grieve longer"? Do you ever feel that?
Yes. Everyone had opinions, and everyone was happy to share that with me.
And everyone does have. Everyone
And you know what? Yeah, they do.
in their head, they have this timeline of how long you should grieve for,
Yeah.
right? So tell me about that. Tell me about dating.
About dating?
Yeah, tell me about dating.
Well, I guess leading up to that, again, I was, I really focused on what I thought Joe would want me to do, and he would want me to move forward with my life. He would want me to live to the fullest. He would want me to, do all these things that he, wanted to experience with the kids. Like he wouldn't want me to be stuck. And, as I got a little further out, I was just thought, you know what, he would really want me to move forward and live my life. And so, but I was feeling kind of stuck and I didn't really know what to do. And so a friend of mine was like, well, why don't you, she had a counselor, and she goes, why don't you go to, my counselor and just talk to her? I was like, okay, I think I'll do that. So I met with this counselor every couple of weeks, and it really ended up being like, it was more like, she was just a great listener, and she ended up being more, I guess, like a life coach, and she'd almost like give me little assignments, and she'd be like, do this, this, and this, and we'll talk about it in a couple of weeks, and I think I, focused on that with her, and I was like, I really want to move forward. I just don't know what to do. I don't know how to do it. And she just gave me like kind of, I don't know if it was the courage or maybe not courage, but just here's the next steps.
Yeah.
And
The little push, the little
yeah,
nudge.
a little push. And a friend of mine, my current husband, Mark, and I met through a good friend of mine. And she, for months and months before that, she kept saying to me, well, why don't you think about, going out with Mark? And I'd said, oh, no. I didn't know him, but I knew who he was. He was kind of in my outer perimeter of the circle of my friends. And never really spent any time with him or anything, but he knew who he was. And so it was, there was that connection, like a personal connection. And apparently she was doing the same thing to him all the time, all the while. And he'd be like, no, I don't want to upset the apple cart and, all of that stuff. So this went on for months. And so the counselor that I was seeing, she's like, oh, we just go out with him for lunch. It's not like you're going to marry him or anything. And I said, okay, well, I can go to lunch with him. So we did. And we went to several lunches. And, I thought, oh, this is a really safe date because I can just be like, oh, got to get back to work.
Yeah, it's lunchtime.
It's lunchtime. I got to get back to work. But, we probably had several lunch dates. And every time I left the lunch date, I thought, there's something really nice about him. He's a good person. I just really like him. There's something that wanted me to keep coming back to hear more. And so that's kind of how it started.
Did you bring up right away, since he was on your periphery of your friend group, he understood that you'd suffered a loss?
Yes.
Was that helpful?
Yes.
Or was it difficult?
No, it was, I think it was probably helpful. I think he knew that it was like a sensitive, issue.
Topic.
And just also, with the
Did you
kids.
talk about it?
We did.
Early on?
We did. No, I think, those lunch dates were really more just, No, I don't want to say superficial.
But
just getting,
surface,
surface talk. Yeah, so, how's your job and, that sort of stuff. And, what'd you do this weekend and things like that.
Did he know, and some of this, if you're uncomfortable talking about this, Annamaria, we can move on, but did he know Joe?
He did.
Did that complicate it? Did that make it easier?
I'd probably have to say maybe it made it a little easier because he kind of knew, he knew the situation. He knew who Joe was as a person. So, yeah, I think that was probably made it a little easier.
We're going to take a quick break to thank our underwriters.
Support for Kelly's Angels comes from Spa Cafe on Broadway in downtown Saratoga Springs, New York, a friendly breakfast and lunch spot featuring delicious breakfast, soups, and sandwiches. Learn more at spacafeonbroadway.com. The New York State Police Investigators Association, which is the plainclothes detective branch of the New York State Police, with more than 1,000 investigators in its ranks. Learn more at nyspia.org. And from Noble Ace Hardware in South Glens Falls, New York, which offers competitive pricing and high-quality products for just about anything you need. For more than 30 years, the team at Noble Ace has delivered on its promise to be the most helpful hardware store in town by providing excellent customer service that exceeds expectations and reflects family values during each and every visit. Now back to my dad's interview about finding love after loss.
Welcome back. Dating for a surviving parent or for those who are divorced looks different for everyone, and it can be stressful for the parent and children alike. That's why we turn to psychologist and parenting expert, Dr. Randy Kale, for some advice. What recommendations do you have for people who are in that boat about things to avoid, perhaps?
Well, a couple critical pointers. Speed. A lot of folks go too early. And so then if you're in reaction mode and you're looking to be healed, there are a lot of potential partners who want to be saviors. They want to save you. They want to heal you. They want to fix you. That formula does not typically work out very well, right? It seems great for a while. So slow it down. That's the number one thing. You just slow it down. And so you've got to be doing your own work and make sure that you've found happiness and security without someone. And so if I'm happy and I've found security, then I'm probably in pretty good shape. Typically, sometimes if it's a marriage and it didn't work out, we'll want to look back and say, well, I don't want somebody like this, I don't want somebody like that. We have these don't wants, right? And again, that's a dangerous thing if I'm looking for someone with a list of don't wants.
Yeah.
I've got to be clear, again, what do I want? So if I know for certain what I'm looking for, what I'm seeking, what kind of relationship, what types of experiences, what sorts of things do we want to share together? If I articulate that in my mind and I know that, then I'm probably going to be able to have success.
When do you introduce the kids?
Boy, doing a lot of work with divorce and divorcing families over the years. I used to do forensic evaluations for the court for many, many years. And so one of the biggest mistakes would be introducing way too early. And wanting, as part of that, is sort of to re-nest, right? Particularly with young children, you kind of want to sort of do this re-nesting thing where you bring the new parent in and now we're going to have a family. And often that comes with wanting to then exclude the other parent a little bit from that. So I think it's at least a year after you go through a divorce, or at least a year. And many families over and over again just ignore that and take their children then through a roller coaster ride, right?
We've all seen that.
Yeah, we've all seen it. And I've got a couple I've known for a while, and they're doing it now, right? 2 months later, the kids are in with new partners, and there's no likely longevity there. And it's bad form for the kids.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
That was psychologist and parenting expert Dr. Randy Kale. Now back to my discussion with Annamaria Bellantoni of Saratoga Springs, whose first husband, Joe, passed away from complications following a biking accident when their children were very young. 5 years after Joe's death, she found love again when she met her now husband, Mark Bellantoni. Our topic today is finding love after loss, and we're talking with Annamaria Bellantoni. What's your advice? Because we try to offer some common sense tips on this podcast. What's your advice to someone who has suffered a loss? How do you know? How do you know when it's time to maybe start dating again, or at least communicating with someone you're interested in again?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think everyone's situation is probably a little bit different, but I would just say I don't think there's any set timeline, but I do think it's really important to, seek some sort of help, counseling, a good trusted friend, somebody that you can talk to kind of, just bounce things off of, to, I guess just, hey, I'm here I am, and I'm needing someone to listen to me.
Sure.
Sort of thing. And
Did you feel guilt at all after enjoying yourself on those lunch dates?
Yeah, maybe a little bit. I mean, just one quick step back too. I was like, when I really decided that I was going to date, and I was really afraid of what people would think or say. And I just had to come to grips and tell myself it's not really up to them. And I think people are so well-intentioned and they do care, but, sometimes they just don't understand.
Amen to that.
What an individual is going through. So, just try to not put judgment on others that are going through something like that.
So you didn't feel guilty? There was no guilt associated with it?
Leading up to deciding, I did. And then finally when I said, you know what, I'm going to move forward. And I said, nope, this is it. There's going to be no guilt and no ill feelings, and I'm going to go with it.
When did you introduce Mark to your children? Or had he known them as well as because he was on the periphery? Or was
he didn't.
You're looking at me like, oh. Is there something you want to share?
No, he did not know them. And I think I was pretty protective of, introducing him to them.
So you prolonged that, you procrastinated that?
Yeah, I would say probably maybe 6 months after we started dating, I introduced him to them.
Because they were about 7 and 4 at the time,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And how did that go?
Good. I mean, I don't think they knew at that point that we were dating.
This is mommy's friend.
Right. And a little bit of a funny story about that, because, I invited Mark over for dinner with me and the kids, and I think I just whipped up something. I wanted to be really nice and pretty and delicious and all that, but it's just your basic Tuesday night dinner kind of thing, because I was busy with other things. But my daughter got talking to him, and Mark was never married before he met me, so, and he had no children, which was neither here nor there, but my daughter got talking to him, and, she says to him, well, do you have a dog? And he's like, no. Do you have a boat? No. Do you have a house? No. She goes, well, you got nothing. so that really made him feel really good. She's like, you got nothing.
Yeah, so you have to jump in at that point. Right?
Yeah. So it's just out of the mouths of little ones, right?
Out of the mouths of babes.
Right.
So he obviously has, following that, he struck up a relationship with your children.
Yes.
And that probably made it easy. And you probably saw that and said, this is kind of cool, isn't it? They've lost their dad, but they have someone I assume they can look up to and they like.
Yes.
So that was probably, how I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that was probably important, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I mean, I was hopeful that would be part of my life someday. And I just, it couldn't have really worked out any better. Mark's a wonderful person. He's a great parent. I always joke with him and say, you're a better parent than I am, but just, very selfless and caring and kind. And I do think, oddly, just at their young age, they were able to spend more time with him. And so they got to, really develop more of a relationship with him.
Do they call him Mark?
They do call him Mark. They do. When they talk about him to other people, though, I notice they'll say my dad. but they don't call him Dad. They call him Mark.
Which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. It is.
In that vein, how do you keep Joe's memory alive with your children? And is
well-
Mark comfortable with it?
Oh yeah, totally comfortable with it. Mark has a great relationship with Joe's parents, his siblings. You know, he's just a part of the family. They're just so warm and welcoming. They just love him. They send him cards. They're wonderful. And it's that part is really nice too, because they've just welcomed him with open arms, and they're dealing with a loss as well.
Sure.
I'm sorry, what was the question before? How do we keep Joe's memory alive with them?
With the children.
Yeah, and so, we have pictures everywhere. We talk about him all the time. At this point, we tell funny stories, and so he's always in our minds. And, when we say grace, we always say, thank you for our time with Joe. Thank you for our time with Dad.
That's so important.
Yeah.
In my view, I dated, I think it was 3 years after Kelly passed. I dated for the first time, and we became very close. And as we became closer, the woman I was dating disliked more of the conversation about Kelly. She didn't like hearing about Kelly. She didn't like remembrances of Kelly. She didn't like seeing photos of Kelly. And that was the beginning of the end of that relationship, because I was raising, at that time, a 10 and an 8-year-old, and Mommy was going to be part of their world as I was bringing them up. That was just a decision I had made, that she had to be central to that. And having a woman say, I'm not really comfortable with it, I had to say, well, I'm not comfortable with this relationship then. So I can relate to that, and the fact that you were able to keep Joe's memory alive with a person you're dating, and then who became your husband, I think is vital, in my view anyway.
Very,
right?
very much so. I wouldn't have it any other way.
When did you get married? When did that come along? And
So we got married in 2010, so 5 years after Joe died.
did you remember Joe in some way? And again, if you're not comfortable, Annamaria, did you remember Joe in some way at your wedding?
We did. We did at our church service. We mentioned him. Like the prayer of the faithful. We got
That's
married in a
very
Catholic
nice.
church. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yes, we did.
How have your children weathered the loss? This is not necessarily about dating and about Mark, but how, 15 years on now, be 16. It was just 16 years. How have they persevered? Do you think they still, are there days when they're still sad or still struggle about losing their dad?
I think so. Very similar to you. Like my son was older, so he has some memories to hold on to, and I think that's a little bit of a blessed thing. I guess just because he has something to hold on to, where my daughter doesn't really have that. So she just doesn't really remember him personally. Like, she can only remember him through pictures and stories and what we tell her, and things like that. I think they have their happy moments and their sad moments. Like, at this point, I think you don't really know what's going to hit you someday. It just could be an very odd thing, and you just get a wave of grief. And it's not necessarily on a birthday or a special occasion. It could just be something that pops into your head that was, I don't know. You could look at a street sign, or any odd thing that just could bring something on like that. So I'm sure they might have moments like that. And I think my son feels a little more, connected, just because he has that memory, where maybe my daughter doesn't as much. So that's a little hard for me.
It is.
A little hard for me.
It hurts your heart, right?
Yeah.
Tell me what advice you might have to someone who has suffered a loss. We touched on it a little bit as far as knowing when the timing is right, but there's more to it than that. Someone who's thinking about maybe dating, someone who's thinking about finding love again. You have any general advice?
Well, if they're really interested and they want to move forward with that in their life, I just say open your heart and I think you do have to work on your grief. You have to work through it. I think you need to do that to get to that next level, to say, I'm ready to do something like this. But just open your heart and trust. And, one of the things that I did kind of right along in the process was like journaling, which, a lot of people tell you to do. And I wrote letters to Joe, and those nights when I was sitting by myself, and some of them were good letters, some of them weren't so good letters,
Sure, yeah.
but that was very helpful.
Yeah, because you're expressing all sorts of things. You're expressing anger, grief, sadness, all of those things.
And just simple things like,
I have to do all this myself, right?
I don't feel like mowing the lawn, or I don't know how to fix this or fix that, or Danny, fell on a skateboard today, or, just really just simple things. But when I got sort of ready to move forward with dating too, I said, you know what, I'm just going to write in my journal, and I'm going to write down what I'm looking for in a person to share my life with. And I just wrote down simple things. It was just a list.
Character traits.
Character traits. Yeah.
Did Mark check those boxes?
He did, and then I didn't even realize it. And then, when I went back to look at it, it was like 99% of all the things that I wrote. So I just, for me, that was just a little exercise. I don't know what led me to do that. But just back to what you asked me, I would just say, don't let anyone stop you if this is where you want to go. Follow your heart. Just seek advice from a friend if you need it. If you need more help than that, seek it out.
Ignore the judgment of others.
Yep. And we were in our that family counseling group together. Well,
Family Connections.
Family Connections, and there was a girl in the group, and she had been further out than we were. And I just remember hearing her talk and just her testimony of where she was at. And I thought, you know what, that's inspiring, and I can get there, and I'm going to do that. And it just helped me to hear that somebody else was successful and happy, and it just gave me a little bit more hope to move forward with my decisions. And things will get less sharp over time, and you will find joy in your life again.
Until next time, I'm Mark Mulholland. Take care and stay on The Upbeat.
If you enjoy The Upbeat, please subscribe and leave us a review wherever you listen to podcasts. If you have topics you'd like us to cover on The Upbeat, please send your ideas to theupbeatpod@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. On behalf of the volunteer board of Kelly's Angels and the families we help who are facing life-threatening conditions, thank you for listening to The Upbeat.
Nice job, McKenna Rose.
Thanks, Dad. You too.